Hey everybody, welcome to Work in Progress, the weekly live show about work, life, and everything in between from Reno Collective. My name is Colin.
I am Rachel.
And
Welcome.
yeah, welcome. How are you doing this week?
Woo! I feel like it's already been 2 weeks, but it's only been half of a week.
Yeah,
So
it's
I'm
March
tired already.
It's
Yeah, and it's
March.
March. I'm not really sure. Woo!
Yeah,
That's a
I mean,
big.
I think we started our podcast in March or April of last year, and so we've almost been doing this for a year. I took a little break when the podcast died. That obviously didn't work out. But yeah, how's the week been? I guess, it sounds like it's been a long one.
It's been a long one. Yeah, I don't really know why. I've actually had all right sleep. I'm not sure. Yeah, it's a weird anniversary coming up with, like, for us, technically it was March 17th when we closed our businesses, the doors to the business.
It's
But
the anniversary of our collective shared trauma.
Right, exactly. And it's kind of crazy. I know this is a bit of a tangent, but it's kind of wild to me that we're seeing mask loosening rules popping up at the same time that we're seeing some of the scientists asking people to double up on their masks.
Yeah.
It's sort of unnerving.
Yeah.
So yeah.
We'll see what happens there. I mean, I'm pretty hopeful. There's a lot of light, a lot of signs of light at the end of the tunnel for this, and so we're gonna keep doing the show, even once we can gather again. But that just means that we can bring on and do different things with the show, which is also fun. So we can have a in studio audience maybe in the future. We'll see. That's
that would be fun.
Right now we have to settle for the laugh track and things like that.
Yes.
Applause.
Yes. Yeah. But, speaking of, where is that laugh track?
So we've got a new format for the show. We I don't know, this is probably more my thinking, but just that, like, I noticed that we've been trying not necessarily to teach, but we're not here. We're here to have a conversation more than we are to try to teach people things. So, and I think we'll all learn something from those conversations, and I think that's a better way of coming at it. And what I love about podcasts and shows like this is that we can evolve. So we've got 3 topics to throw out today. It's just the 2 of us, but in the future we'll continue that with different topics, and that way our guests can chime in on those with us. Ideally, the guest will be an expert or someone who's familiar with one of those topics. But we'll have some fun topics too that we can dive into, and we've been learning some fun things around. So what's the first one?
Okay, so the first one is one that I am actually very interested in, and first topic is toxic positivity. So, of course, being positive is a good thing, right? However, just like anything, too much of a good thing goes bad. So toxic positivity is defined as the belief that no matter how dire or difficult a situation is, people should maintain a positive mindset. So I found an article on, I think it's called Very Well Mind, and the author of the piece mentioned and gave a couple of examples of what toxic positivity is. So if you have ever been in a situation where someone says the following: happiness is a choice, or everything happens for a reason, or look on the bright side, depending on how negative or dire the situation that comment stemmed from is sort of a measurement of how toxic positivity works. So it's really about being positive and being on and being happy all the time without having any chance to take a break from being positive, to accept negative feelings and accept negative situations and kind of be with them versus constantly trying to ward them off.
Yeah, I think that's pretty timely to what we were just talking about with the pandemic too. Is that with an anniversary of something that has been a lot of loss and in some cases buried trauma for some people, they have to keep going to work or figuring out how to make it work. They never really fully looked at those emotions, those feelings, and they try to reject them, suppress them. And, there's reasons why we do it. Obviously, sometimes we have to pull ourselves up and just get something done. But then if you never come back to it, then that's when it becomes pretty toxic.
Yeah, definitely. Well, and, in looking at this and doing a little bit of research, I started thinking about how social media sort of reflects that toxic positivity, because most of the time you see the best of everyone's lives, right? Like you post the vacation you went on, and what you post is the picture of the 2 cocktails as the sun is setting. You don't post the picture of you and your partner or whomever having an argument about what time you need to go down for breakfast, or driving as fast as you can in the
airport,
rental car. Yeah, exactly. Like you show the picture of, hey, vacation over, with your champagne glasses, which really you kind of wanted to throw on each other because it was a really stressful trip, right? So all this positivity, which has its place for sure. But at the same time, shit goes wrong. It's okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean,
like
this is
filter.
It's okay to not be okay all the time. And
yes,
I think that's definitely a big one. I mean, from a positivity perspective, the benefits to positive thinking are going to be pretty obvious, right? That, especially if you're starting a new thing, you kind of have to have a positive mindset, because it's going to be hard the first time you do something. But if you constantly are rejecting those difficult feelings or emotions and never stop to actually, you're just building up this fake wall around yourself. And that's where people start to look and compare, right? The highlight reels, the social media, stuff like that. Right. And they're comparing, okay, this is what my facade looks like compared to their facade, but this is what's really happening underneath. And for me, this is really related to the idea of faking it till you make it, because you do have to have a positive mindset to fake it till you make it. And in some cases, I don't know, maybe faking it till you make it's the wrong the phrase, but it's something a lot of people say, right? Especially in business and entrepreneurship and things like that.
Yeah.
Always killing it, crushing it, hustle, grind, all these things. It is okay to realize, your business is not always going to be that way. And I also understand you're not going to go tweet that it's not, okay, right? You're not going to go tweet we're having setbacks. You're only going to tweet all the good things, but
because there's a perception.
Exactly,
Yeah, you have to maintain a specific perception. And I agree that there are definitely times when we need to sort of bolster our own perception of ourselves or our business or the situation in the world. Like, hey, people talking about spending more time with their kids. It's a silver lining of COVID. Well, it's also a shitty lining of COVID. Sometimes that's not so great. Or always, cooking from home and having, great meals, etc. Well, sometimes there aren't that great meals. Those meals are not that great, don't turn out that well, or it becomes stressful to get all the ingredients, or for whatever reason. But the negative feelings don't just disappear into thin air. And there's some scientific research that shows that we literally internalize some of those feelings, and we can change our bodies to also internalize positive feelings. But if we never let go of negative feelings, some of that energy ends up sitting in parts of our body. So it's tied to, some alternative medicines, or the one with the needle, acupuncture. Right. So releasing negative feelings and things like that. But there's some Western medicine that's starting to ascribe to that, where we have in our muscles is some of that negativity or the positivity.
Well,
so you gotta let it
neuroplasticity
go.
has a lot to do with this too, right? So when you learn something, you're creating these pathways, and you can change those pathways. And if you're only focused on these, I wouldn't even say that positive thinking, toxic positivity is only positive thinking. You are actively suppressing negative things.
Right.
It's not sunshine all the time. You're actively trying to suppress those, and that's now a neural pathway that you're creating. So
Exactly. Well, and in the article that we had read, a woman had, and she was a psychologist, and I'm not remembering her name, but she brought up the point of emotional agility is the opposite or the antidote to toxic positivity.
Mm-hmm.
So if we think of, we're feeling like we always have to be on, we always have to be positive, we always have to be crushing it or whatever, right? The emotional agility is what is going to allow us to cope with those negative feelings and move past them. And I think you have to, like you said, like you have to deal with those negative feelings in order to get back to the positive feelings, like a
Yeah.
pendulum swinging,
Yeah.
right?
Let's unpack
So
the
it's,
backpack.
yes, yeah. There you go. Yeah, unpack the backpack.
So
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know
Oh,
if
interesting.
someone hasn't heard that before. I mean, the idea is that you are putting all of those things in that backpack and
Mm-hmm.
carrying them around with you. And at some point, you have to open it and empty it out, or you're just going to carry that weight around with you, right? So you have
Right.
to, whether it's addressing it, dealing with it, recognizing it, and letting it go. It doesn't necessarily mean that you have to do something about it.
Mm-hmm.
It just might just
Mm-hmm.
even just mean spending some time with it and letting it go.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
mentioned some of the statements that are well intentioned that you kind of started this off with, like happiness is a choice. Um,
Mm-hmm.
Everything happens for a reason. Like on the bright side, Jonathan shared a story with us that our obsession with happiness is making our kids miserable.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And would love to hear more about what you think about that specifically.
Yeah. So that it's really talking about the expectation that you set specifically in that article. It was a New York Times or Washington Post article.
Mm-hmm.
Was if you're setting the example, the expectation high for positivity, like, there's encouragement, like, you go, girl. And then there's like, own the day. Well, okay, if you're telling your kid every day to own the day and they're not making it to own the day, and all you're showing them is positivity instead of sitting back and maybe, going through the experience that they had that might have not been that great.
Right. They're going to
If
have
you
failures,
shunt
right?
that, right,
Yeah.
exactly. And if you just keep what you're teaching them is to keep it inside, right? You're teaching them to do what you're doing, which is toxic positivity, and it will end up making them pretty miserable because they're comparing themselves to you, who is their role model,
Right. Well, and
basically.
I mean, I'm not a parent, so I'll caution all that. But I imagine that it's also, people want to protect their kids,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
But we learn the most from the things that didn't work, right? It's you only
Yeah.
touch the hot stove once before you realize
Yeah.
it's not a good idea, and it
Right.
might even be, sports or whatever it is. It's like the stakes aren't that high, and there will be failure,
Mm-hmm.
but not if
Mm-hmm.
everyone's being told that they're counting on you all the time and that you have to
Yeah.
crush it, kill it, and so forth.
Yeah. I've had conversations with my daughter where I've seen that, honest conversations with her about something that is not going to go well.
Yeah.
So, if somebody gets sick, then yeah, we're worried about them, versus everything's going to be fine. No, it's not going to be fine.
Right.
Like, this situation is not panning out to be fine, and I'd rather you be obviously age appropriate, honest, but give people some time to maybe expect a negative, like, kind of seeing that there's a negative outcome or knowing that there could be either, versus happiness is a choice. Well, I feel really shitty. So am I not okay to be shitty? Like, it's okay to feel that feeling too.
Right.
Teaching them to feel all the feelings.
Emotional intelligence. Yeah.
Yes. There's
Emotional.
actually, so this is a side note, but there's something called the feelings wheel. And I also saw it down as the emotions wheel. But I spotted it on, I think it was a programmer that had designed a program where you could print it out. It was weird. But it breaks down the 6 or 7 basic emotions that we have, or feelings, and then spawns out all these words that are like the first level of that feeling. So like anger is one of our
Mm-hmm.
basic emotions. And then there's like betrayal, frustration, like one level. And it
Right.
goes out like 3 or 4 levels. And there's all these words for emotions that, like, not just saying I'm angry, but like, okay, I'm not just angry, I'm X, Y, and Z. Like, that's the kind of anger I have. Anyway, that relates to the emotional intelligence, which
Cool. We'll have to see if we can
I'm a
find
big
that.
fan of.
Yeah. As am I. I guess speaking of toxicity and
Yeah.
social media
And emotions.
and emotions, let's talk about Clubhouse. So,
Yeah.
real quick for people who don't know what it is currently invite only. It's also currently iOS only. And I have been following Clubhouse just because it's the tech startup world, and it's been around for a while. We can kind of just jump into like what we think about it. I'm on it, but I don't use it. I tried it out because it just kept coming up, and I was like, okay, I gotta check this thing out. And we were having a conversation with a friend the other day, and they were just like, I don't know, are we just too old? Do we not get it? Which I don't think that's the case. I mean, I think most of the users are actually not young people. It's not TikTok type audience. It's definitely skews, I would say, older. But I think the big thing here we want to talk about is underrated or overrated Clubhouse.
So I've never been on it. I've seen pictures of what the screens look like, but
and it's audio only. So we didn't talk about that. So it's audio only.
Right.
There is an app, but it's basically like joining a conference call with, in some cases, hundreds of, if not thousands of people, depending on who shows up. And some of these rooms have had like Elon Musk and others show up in them, and that's where some people are just like hanging out in certain rooms hoping for something like that to happen. But it seems pretty exhausting for that use of like, I'm going to hang out in a Clubhouse all day long waiting for a conversation to start. Or and I know that some people have timed scheduled sessions like, hey, we're going to have a co-working managers chat with other co-working spaces around the world on how they're dealing with COVID. From that perspective, it's kind of cool if we can say, okay, at 6 p.m., just like this show, we're going to allow that to happen. But I don't know. I don't think I consume content that way personally. It's just a little too live for me. I think that there's some good ideas, and we can talk about kind of what the rest of the internet's doing with that.
Yeah, so it started about a couple months before sort of the COVID like anniversary date. So I think it started January of 2020. So it wasn't pandemic originated. It didn't come from, all of us are working from home kind of a thing. However,
I think that definitely helped for sure.
Oh, yeah. Oh, and I think it grew. Yeah, like it wasn't born from that, but it definitely benefited from it.
Yeah.
Right, exactly. For me, one of the things that they talk about in their kind of pitch, like, when you go onto the site to learn more about it, is that it is voice only, audio only, and you can tell so much about a voice that you can't tell from just words. Which I think, well, right. So why wouldn't it have visual?
Yeah. And visual would be kind of like what we're doing right now. So like we're on Twitch and YouTube, so we have both video. You could argue like right now we're talking heads, right? We could be doing screen sharing. We could be, most people on Twitch are doing video games, things like that, and there is a video element to it. I do consume YouTube frequently, but it's almost always recorded stuff, right? It's at your leisure, watch this. So like, but I think that same example, that co-working example, is something that we have cited on webinars. How is this different than an audio webinar, right? Or an audio only webinar, which I do think is part of the opportunity. Like we don't have conferences, we don't have events, we don't have these things right now. And so for that perspective, it feels like a lot of things just went to Clubhouse. But you were mentioning before we started that it does seem to be, I would say it's a strong echo chamber, like extremely strong. It's mostly Silicon Valley, talking Silicon Valley about Silicon Valley. And I don't personally like that kind of stuff, so it's not really where I like to hang out. But when I did log in, I don't know if it was, I clicked on the topics I cared about. It was mostly a lot of the get rich online type crowd. And I just don't, it's just a hard to even stomach most of that stuff. So,
which it's funny that I was looking up something about working from home, something specific, and what came up was a bunch of these comments about how, what are all those people like? Mom makes $4,000
Right.
every month working from home. Like, where is she now?
Yeah.
Or like
Well, and remember that
$9,000.
before all of us were working from home, you would see ads about like make money working
Yeah,
from home, and you're like, that's
yeah,
gotta be a scam. And now most of us are working from home and making money.
right,
So
right, exactly. And it feels like and again, this is because I haven't been on it, but I don't have the desire to jump on something like that because my time is like really limited. And so, and not to sound like self-important or anything, just I don't have a lot of
yeah, you
time.
only have
And
so many
so,
things to choose from. Yeah.
right, exactly. And I'm going to choose if I can, if something is important enough to me, if it is live or recording, then I'm going to try and do the live. Otherwise, I'm going to watch the recording on my own time.
Right.
However, I also know that sometimes that recording watching doesn't happen
Yeah.
because I don't have the time. So I've got to make the time to do the original. But it
Well,
just
but
has a sort of sense of like like a safe space in the way that it's not safe for anyone but rich white elite men, if that makes sense. Like it kind of has a
that's what it
little bit
feels
of
like.
this,
That's what it
yeah, like
feels like.
that's what you can see in some of the articles that have been written. And again, like I haven't been on there, and we know of people who are really into it, like in the co-working industry that are really into it. But I just
Well, I would argue a lot of those people, they love whatever the new thing is. So
yep,
that's also, the loving shiny new things. And
uh-huh,
I do think, I follow the more startup side of this, is that they were worth like $100 million in March before the pandemic, which barely had any users. They don't make any money. There's no business model. And now, as of January, their new valuation is $1 billion. Still, only one phone. They don't support Android. They don't have a way of making money yet. And I could see ways of them making money. Like you could charge tickets. You could, they've argued. I guess a lot of comics have gotten like doing stand up on Clubhouse has gotten really big. So
huh,
being
okay,
able to practice things in a Clubhouse room, and like some really famous comics have gotten in there to do that. And it's almost like a way where if you had like a private Clubhouse, so like you can
yeah,
charge tickets or have Patreon type backing, stuff like that. I could see that, but ads don't make sense to me because it's live. So like,
right.
if you have to listen to a Squarespace ad, it's kind of strange. But
So that's funny because that reminds me of Twitter. So I'm old enough to have been there when Twitter started. And I think it was Ashton Kutcher was one of
yeah,
like the first celebrities that was big on there. And he was responding to people. And it was like this way of, oh my God, I'm talking to Ashton Kutcher. I Twitter was never my thing. I had to do it for work, but I really couldn't be bothered by Ashton Kutcher responding or
yeah,
whatever.
big
But that was a
celebrities,
big
big
thing.
companies, right? I mean, I
Yeah, like it's
remember,
this way to approach. And I wonder if that's the idea with Clubhouse is like, while it's small,
yeah,
you might actually get to have a conversation with Elon Musk. No,
yeah.
you're fucking not going to.
Well, but that was one of the articles I
Like,
did see, was that if you missed out on being an influencer on TikTok, then this is your
uh-huh.
chance to become an influencer. And I
Right.
do feel like there's a lot of thought leaders. It's a lot of the medium type
Mm-hmm.
thought leaders. We've
Mm-hmm.
talked about the aspiration economy before. It's
Right.
more of
Yep.
that, like, oh, these people have made it, and I want to be as close to them as possible
Mm-hmm.
to, have some of their wealth and luck and fortune rub off on me, whatever that is. And,
Yeah.
versus how much time you're going to spend in one of these rooms versus putting in the work, right? And just,
Yes.
making your own story there. So Twitter is coming out with their own. They have Twitter Spaces,
Right.
which is its own version of Clubhouse, which I actually think might be more interesting because I already have, a community on Twitter. If you're having a
Mm-hmm.
conversation on Twitter, you could jump into a space and have an audio conversation. So I think that's kind of cool. Facebook / Instagram is already working on something as well. And I think about it from like the collective's perspective. How would we use it? And I don't know why we wouldn't. Like we just jump on Zoom. Like we can say
Yeah.
we have a Zoom link that any of our members can join, and we can do an
Right.
audio chat.
Yeah.
And Discord is very similar, where you can have a room that's just audio only and jump into it anytime you want.
Mm-hmm.
And we've been experimenting with like, what does co-working online look like? What does virtual
Mm-hmm.
co-working look like? And I don't know that audio is necessarily a component of virtual co-working, right? Because it's, a lot of, my
Yeah.
mechanical keyboard over here and people drinking
Right.
and
Right.
drinking
Right. Right.
coffee and
Right.
stuff. It doesn't sound great, right? But
Yeah.
and we've also determined that video is not necessarily important, but just knowing
Hmm.
that other people are also working and that we're going
Yeah.
to do a check-in at the top of the hour or whatever is
Yep.
pretty helpful. So,
A shared experience. Yeah, exactly. But I do, yeah, I think it's, there is something about when you get the right celebrities on board or the right, and maybe that, like in Silicon Valley, they have their own celebrities. I'm not talking about, like Jay-Z or something, but, the Silicon Valley celebrities. And so they're on I was going to use a bad term, but they're all sitting around and they're all loving each other.
Yep. There's a lot of that.
And then it expands from that because other people, again, aspiration, they want to be a part of that. They want to jump on board and everything. But
I do love one of the investor guys that I follow that I really like listening to.
Yeah.
He went into some of these like fulfillment by Amazon and get rich online things because there is some people taking advantage of people in these groups, right? You have just like if you do any e-commerce work, it's very like for me with my work, I get ads on YouTube all the time for they're always, it's the Ty Lopez type stuff. It's the this is what a bag of $1 million looks like. We can make you $1 million. I'm like, why am I getting these ads? And it's because I do stuff with Shopify, I do stuff with Squarespace, I do stuff with all these different sites, and so they're keying in on those keywords and trying to get people to pay them to show show you how their secrets, and their secret is that they had a bunch of people paying them to show them their secrets, right? And your results may vary. And so
there's your secret.
He went into some of these, and he had it was a well-known rapper. I can't remember who it was that led him on stage because they're like, oh, I'm friends with this guy, and so he went on stage and he was asking these founders, like these consultants, like, oh, what were your like 5 businesses that you were most proud of? And like they couldn't name any of them, but they keep saying, oh, we've sold hundreds of businesses. And it's like, well, pitch me your favorite one. And they kicked him off the stage, and it's a lot of drama, and I think a lot of people like to feed on that, obviously, as well too. And
absolutely,
people are at home and need some entertainment. So
they are. Well, so we sort of started to segue, which is celebrity endorsements.
Perfect.
And that it's our third topic of tonight, which is Chuck Taylors. It was, so someone asked, one of our members asked, why are you guys talking about Chuck Taylors? And I was like, because they've had like a resurgence again. And the question was, why? What are you talking about? And you type in Chucks and Pearls is one of the things, but if you type in Chuck Taylors, some of the pictures that come up first are of VP Kamala Harris. Yeah. And
I like to think that like Kamala and I.
Kamala, yes, I'm sorry. I keep doing that. Yeah. Yeah, like she's got pairs and pairs and pairs, but she had that the version, I assume she did them herself, but she might have, I didn't look into it, she might have had an artist do it, but they were all decorated and kitted out and everything. And so that's what came to my mind as far as the latest resurgence. But the funny part is that when we were coming up with topics, I just turned around and looked over and Colin was wearing Chuck Taylors, so done. They're
my signature. Kamala and I, we've been making Converse popular again.
Perfect.
But the celebrity endorsement, so we just for fun, well, I guess we can do underrated, overrated on Chucks for sure. I think underrated, personally. Not good basketball shoes, but great all around, casual shoe.
Yeah, bad support, but underrated. I mean, you don't see them enough.
Yeah, and they hold up. I mean, I have a lot of pairs. Sometimes I switch up the colors and wear 2 different colors at once. And I love that when I fully walk through a pair, I can take them to the Converse store and they recycle them, so they turn them into the material for like playgrounds.
No way! I didn't know that. Okay.
Yeah, so because I wear them to the point where you couldn't donate them, right? They disintegrate and they just need to be recycled. So they have this big bin when you go to any of the Converse stores. But Nike actually owns Converse now.
Right.
They were not as popular in like the, when other basketball shoes were coming out. These have been around since the 20s. And the celebrity endorsement part is that the basketball player Charles Chuck Taylor was a salesperson for Converse, and so it was basically the first celebrity endorsed shoe.
Yeah, I thought it was the person who invented them or designed them or something, right?
Yeah.
But no.
Which, I mean, even Nike, like if you've not seen, there's a lot of really good stories and books and movies on like the creation of Nike and like Prefontaine and stuff like that, where they use the waffle iron to make the first track shoe and stuff like that. Yeah. So if you're into that, it's just fun culture, and I love like that you can have like a solid black classic, Chuck, or now they have, we were just looking at the website, they have like Italian leather ones.
Right.
Nike actually has one now that's like, they're like double stitched, better canvas, and they have Nike soles in them. So
right.
I haven't tried those ones yet, but
some actual support. Well, and they're a slim shoe, because a lot of like running shoes, things like that people might wear for like as casual are so thick and so bulky. I was sharing with Colin earlier that the first pair of Converse I ever had, I actually bought because senior year in high school, in a whole other lifetime, I trained to be a whitewater rafting guide. And those shoes, and I don't know if they still are, there's probably another shoe, were like
the thing. Now or something.
Yeah, exactly. That like everybody, every cool whitewater rafting guide wore, because of the way that the sole and the canvas like stuck like glue to the bottom, like where the fold is in the like the raft side and the raft bottom. So when you shove your feet under there, they don't slip, because they're like glue. That sole was perfect for it.
Yeah. That's super flat shoe.
They dry really fast. Yeah, like they, your feet, even when you like, if you get Converse wet, we didn't wear socks obviously, but if you got Converse wet, they dry really fast, and they're not like slimy and thick, and like, because if you think about it, like you're wet all day, but you don't really want no shoes on, because you want to protect yourself and shove your feet under the edge so you don't bounce out the boat.
Right.
But yeah, that was where I fell in love with Converse. Then it was like, when that little pipe dream ended, I decided to, I could wear the shoes. So,
they work well. I think they're also, I'm a big fan of the show Queer Eye, and they do some really good makeovers where a lot of men just don't know how to dress ever.
Yes.
Right? And so just like simple, classic look, very easy to dress up or dress down with Converse. You can get a leather high top or a low top, whatever you want.
Yep.
Tan France is a fan, so if you need fashion advice, definitely check out some of the newer seasons of that.
Yeah, exactly. Oh man, there was one point where a friend, so my husband and I were just a group of friends, and one of the guys was like, this is just my like my personal signature. It's like, what? My red Converse. And everyone was like, oh God, you're always wearing those things. It's like, it's my like personal signature. I'm like, is it really?
I mean, for a really long time, I always wore black Converse, and I had the black Ray-Bans, right? And that was like almost too much my signature for a while. So I had to switch it up. Got some new sunglasses. And can't get stuck in those neural pathways.
Did you fold cigarettes in your white
shirt? Yeah, you gotta have the folded shirt. You gotta have the skinny jeans.
The black comb popping out of your back pocket.
So Chuck Taylor's underrated.
Yes, good history. Well, awesome. All right, well, that's the new format. That was quite fun. Change up the topics.
Yeah.
Obviously go on tangents. That was good.
I mean, a whole show of tangents is also pretty good too. So
yeah, absolutely.
Do that. But what are we talking about next week?
That's a really good question.
All right. Well, where can people
watch
the show next week?
They can watch it here. So we are on Twitch and we are on YouTube. Just type in Reno Collective on both. We post and make notices all over the place, notifications all over the place. So you can always find us on Facebook, you can find us on Twitter, Instagram, and then of course renocollective.com. And that's going to be the best place to find us and connect with us. So
not on Clubhouse, but
no, not
we
yet.
hope to return to the actual Clubhouse eventually. So we're working on what does it look like to return to the collective. How does that all work, and when do we feel like it's safe to do so? So definitely keep in touch with all of that, and we'll see you next week. Thanks, everybody.
Yes. Good night. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.